The city was unusually quiet that night, as if the world itself had stepped back to make space for something important, something rare. The sky was a velvet sheet of deep blue, sprinkled with faraway stars that seemed to pulse with curiosity. Below that sky, on the 12th floor of an old but elegant apartment building, light glowed softly behind a window. If someone on the street looked up, they might have felt something warm radiating from that particular room, something almost magnetic. Inside the apartment, Xiao Zhan stood by the window, arms crossed gently over his chest, his silhouette outlined by the quiet lights of the city outside. He wasn't nervous, not exactly, but there was a rushing warmth in his chest that made him swallow every few seconds, like his heart was trying to speak before he did. He had cleaned the apartment twice already. He had lit a candle and then blown it out because he thought it seemed too intentional. He had rearranged the pillows on the couch, then rearranged them again. And now he found himself just standing there, staring out at the city and waiting for a soft knock that meant more than any knock ever had before. Tonight wasn't planned, but somehow it felt destined. Just 2 hours earlier, Wang Yibo had messaged him. Something short, something simple, but something that hit Xiao Zhan straight in the center of his chest. "Can I come over?" 3 words. But those 3 words carried the weight of months. Months of working together, laughing too hard, pretending not to stare for too long, texting at odd hours, sharing quiet little moments that neither of them ever explained but both of them felt. Xiao Zhan had typed yes without thinking. His hands had moved faster than his thoughts, as if his heart had already decided on its own. Now the room felt different, warmer, expectant, like it was ready to witness something unforgettable. The clock ticked. Footsteps echoed faintly from the hallway outside. Xiao Zhan turned toward the door just as the soft, familiar knock came. 3 gentle taps. His breath caught. He walked toward the door, each step echoing the rising rhythm of his heartbeat. When he opened it, he found Wang Yibo standing there, hair slightly wind-tousled, eyes darker than usual, a soft breath leaving his lips as if he'd been holding it the whole way here. "Hi," Yibo said quietly. The simplicity of the greeting softened something inside Xiao Zhan. "Hi," he replied, voice warm, almost a whisper. They stood there for a moment longer than normal, maybe even longer than reasonable. But neither of them moved. Neither of them looked away. Wang Yibo finally stepped inside, closing the door behind him with a soft click. The room fell into its own quiet universe. Outside, noise faded. Even the city lights seemed to dim respectfully. "You look tired," Xiao Zhan said gently. Yibo gave a soft half-smile. "Long day." He paused, eyes drifting around the room as though taking in every detail before landing on Xiao Zhan again. "But I wanted to see you." Those words landed differently, like something tender brushing against exposed nerve. Xiao Zhan felt it, and he didn't hide it. "I'm glad you came." He led Yibo into the living room, where the soft glow of a single lamp painted the walls in warm gold. The faint smell of green tea still lingered from earlier. Everything felt calm, grounding. Yibo sank into the corner of the couch, leaning back, exhaling deeply, as if this, being here in this space, was the first real breath he'd taken all day. "You okay?" Xiao Zhan asked, sitting down beside him, but not too close. "Not yet." Yibo looked at him for a long, quiet moment. "I don't know," he admitted softly. "I just needed to be somewhere that felt real, that struck something deep." Xiao Zhan didn't say anything at first. Instead, he shifted just a little closer. Close enough for their shoulders to brush lightly. Close enough that Yibo's breath hitched for just a fraction of a second. "What happened?" Xiao Zhan asked gently. Yibo shook his head. "Nothing big. Just tired of pretending everything's fine all the time." He glanced sideways. "With you, I don't feel like I have to pretend." That confession made the room feel warmer. Xiao Zhan leaned back, letting the soft cushions hold him. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was full of meaning, of unsaid things, of everything they'd both been feeling for so long. "You know," Xiao Zhan said slowly, "you can always come to me. For anything." Yibo looked at him, really looked at him, eyes deep, steady, searching. What if? I want to come to you for things I'm not supposed to want. Yibo asked quietly. The air shifted. Something electric flickered between them, subtle but undeniable. Xiao Zhan's heart stumbled. Then tell me, he whispered. For a long moment, Yibo didn't speak. He only held Xiao Zhan's gaze, his breathing slow, careful. Then, very gently, he reached out and touched Xiao Zhan's hand, just one fingertip brushing against the back of it. It was a small touch, but it felt like the beginning of something huge. Xiao Zhan didn't pull away. He turned his hand instead, letting their fingers brush, then settle slowly, naturally into each other's. The warmth of Yibo's skin seeped into his own, grounding him and pulling him in at the same time. Yibo's voice was soft when he spoke again. I didn't come here because I needed a place to rest. He swallowed lightly. I came here because being around you feels right. Xiao Zhan felt his breath catch, but he held the gaze. It feels right to me too. The confession hung in the air like something fragile and precious. Yibo exhaled, his shoulders relaxing as though letting go of something heavy he'd been carrying alone for too long. He leaned a little closer, their heads now only inches apart. Can I stay tonight? He asked. Xiao Zhan's voice was steady, warm. Yes. That one word opened the door to everything. The night didn't rush. It didn't demand anything. It simply unfolded, slow, gentle, and full of emotion. They talked for hours. About their days. About things they'd never said out loud. About laughter, fears, dreams, the quiet, hidden parts of themselves that only ever came out in the right company. At some point, Xiao Zhan made tea. Yibo followed him into the kitchen, leaning against the counter, while Xiao Zhan moved about with calm familiarity. The kitchen light cast a soft glow over them, making the moment feel like a scene from a quiet, beautiful film. You're watching me, Xiao Zhan said without turning. Yibo didn't deny it. I like watching you. Xiao Zhan paused, fingers curling slightly around the teacup. His heart beat a little faster, but he kept his voice calm. Why? Yibo stepped closer. Because you make everything look peaceful, even when I feel chaotic. Xiao Zhan turned then, meeting Yibo's eyes. You're not chaotic, he said softly. You're just honest. Yibo blinked, surprised by the answer. Then something softened in his expression, something vulnerable, something grateful. They moved back to the living room, sitting even closer this time. Their knees brushed, their shoulders pressed against one another naturally, without overthinking. The world outside continued on, cars passing, people walking, life moving. But inside that room, time stretched into something gentle, golden. The soft morning light had just begun to seep in through the half-closed curtains, painting the bedroom in muted shades of golden rose. But neither of them was awake yet. The world outside was just beginning to stretch, but inside this room, time still moved slowly, gently, like it didn't dare interrupt the moment that had formed between them overnight. Xiao Zhan was the first to stir, not fully awake, just drifting. His breathing shifted, a subtle change, his fingers twitching slightly where they rested against Yibo's chest. It was that small movement that made Yibo blink, open his eyes, still heavy with sleep. The first thing he saw was Xiao Zhan lying beside him, face soft, lashes resting peacefully against his skin, his hand still loosely touching Yibo, as if afraid of letting go even in dreams. A warmth bloomed quietly in Yibo's chest, gentle, deep, almost overwhelming in its simplicity. He didn't move. He didn't want to disturb the moment. Instead, he watched Xiao Zhan breathe, watched the way the morning light brushed softly against his skin, highlighting every gentle curve of his face. There was something beautiful in the way Xiao Zhan slept, something calm and completely unguarded. It felt like a privilege, one Yibo didn't take lightly. As if sensing the weight of Yibo's gaze, Xiao Zhan's eyes fluttered slowly open. For a heartbeat, he looked confused, caught between sleep and waking. Then recognition settled in, and a soft, warm smile curved his lips, one that seemed to glow even more than the morning light around them. You're awake already? Xiao Zhan murmured, voice husky from sleep. Yibo's lips tugged into a tired but genuine smile. Only because you moved. Xiao Zhan blinked, then laughed softly, a low, warm sound that felt like sunlight. Sorry. Don't be, Yibo said quietly, his voice softer than he intended. Waking up beside you isn't something I want to sleep through. Xiao Zhan's breath caught, the warmth on his face deepening. He looked down at their hands, still tangled together from the night before, and gave Yibo's fingers a gentle squeeze. Last night felt unreal, Xiao Zhan whispered. It wasn't, Yibo replied. I was here. You were here. It was real. They lay there for a moment, simply looking at each other. No rush, no awkwardness, just that same steady pull from the night before, soft and magnetic. Eventually Xiao Zhan shifted, turning onto his back and stretching slightly, his shirt slipping up just a little. Yibo looked away instinctively, not out of discomfort, but respect, because this was still new, still delicate, something to handle with quiet intention. Did you sleep well? Xiao Zhan asked, his voice still touched with a lazy sweetness. Better than I have in months, Yibo answered honestly. Xiao Zhan turned his head to face him again. Because you were tired? No, Yibo said. Then he paused, choosing his words carefully. Because I felt safe. That admission settled in the air like a soft heartbeat. Xiao Zhan's expression softened immediately, gentle, touched, full of something that mirrored Yibo's own emotions. You're safe with me, Xiao Zhan said quietly. Always. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was a silence that held trust, openness, something forming, not rushed, not forced, just real. After a few moments, Xiao Zhan sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes. The blankets slid down slightly, revealing the curve of his shoulder in the morning light. He glanced back at Yibo, who watched him with a quiet, thoughtful expression. Come on, Xiao Zhan said softly. Let's make breakfast. Yibo hesitated. Do we have to move yet? The question was half joking, half hopeful. Xiao Zhan smiled, then reached out and gently brushed a stray strand of hair away from Yibo's forehead. 5 more minutes, Xiao Zhan whispered. Those 5 minutes turned into 10. Then 15. They stayed there, lying beside each other, sometimes talking softly, sometimes just breathing in the same gentle silence. Every so often, their hands found each other again, fingers brushing, fingers intertwining, resting comfortably. There was something powerful in the simplicity of it, something grounding, something they both needed more than either of them had realized until now. Eventually, Xiao Zhan sighed and stood, stretching again, his feet meeting the cool floor. Okay, now we really have to get up. Yibo watched him for a moment before rising too. They moved toward the kitchen together, steps slow, hearts still beating in that quiet shared rhythm. In the kitchen, Xiao Zhan reached for the kettle. He asked. Always, Yibo said. Xiao Zhan smiled. Good. There is something beautifully domestic about the scene. Xiao Zhan pouring water into the kettle, Yibo leaning against the counter, the soft clink of teacups, the quiet morning sun warming the space. This wasn't a dramatic moment. It wasn't loud or intense, but it was intimate, deeply intimate, a different kind of closeness, comfortable, real, lived in. Yibo watched Xiao Zhan move around the kitchen with ease, his expression softening with every glance. Finally he spoke. Zhanji, he said quietly. Xiao Zhan turned. Yibo hesitated for half a second. Then, thank you for last night. Xiao Zhan's breath caught at the sincerity in the words. You don't have to thank me. I do, Yibo insisted gently. You made space for me when I needed it. You didn't ask for anything. You just let me be close. Xiao Zhan stepped toward him, closing the distance until he was standing directly in front of him. That's not something you thank me for, he murmured. That's something I wanted. Their eyes held each other for a long moment, warm and honest. Good, Yibo whispered. Because I did too. And just like that, the morning wrapped itself around them with the same tenderness the night had carried. 2 people, 1 quiet kitchen, 1 gentle beginning, a beginning neither of them wanted to end.